In the next few minutes, we'll tackle some key elements that make network management a breeze if done right, namely managing DHCP leases and reservations. So why bother? Well, imagine running out of IPs on a busy day, or the same device getting different IPs, causing all kinds of confusion. We'll explore practical use cases where effective lease and reservation management will save you network nightmares. And we'll do all that using PowerShell, your trusty sidekick in efficient network management. Time for another demo. In the upcoming demo, we'll dive into how to view the current status of DHCP leases, such as expiration times and client identifiers. And you'll also learn how to refresh or release those leases when necessary. All right, so let's dive in and tackle DHCP lease management. So first up, let's check out to see what the current DHCP leases are. So I'm going to run the get DHCP server v4 lease commandlet, and I'm going to look for the scope ID of 192.168.1.0. Okay, running that on the DHCP server, you can see we have one lease. That is all the active leases within the 192.168.1.0 scope. So right now we only have one. All right, so now let's look up a specific lease. So in this case, for this example, we only have one lease, but what we can do is add the IP address parameter to this, and that will limit the scope of the leases returned only to .1.100. This commandlet gives us detailed info like the MAC address, lease expiry, and so on. This is specific to the 1.100, so this kind of filters it down by that IP address. Now, let's say that, I don't know, maybe we need to release that lease manually. Typically, if it will expire out, if it was in a normal production environment, but in this case, since we're just in a test environment, maybe we need to release it. I don't know, maybe we need to do some troubleshooting, or maybe freeing up some resources, whatever. So here's how you would do that. To remove it is pretty much just as simple as getting it. You specify the scope ID and the same IP address, and just use the remove DHCP server v4 lease commandlet. Once you run that, you'll have no output. If you don't, no error. No error is great. Now let's check and see if that lease is gone. To see if it's gone, I'll just simply run the get DHCP server v4 lease commandlet again, specifying the exact same scope ID and IP address. Hit enter, and no output is good output. That means that it is removed. So it's really easy to manage DHCP leases. As you can see, there's really not a whole lot to it. In this, we've covered how to list active DHCP leases. We drilled down into a specific lease, and we demonstrated how to remove or release a lease manually. Now, like I said, there's not a whole lot to managing leases, but with PowerShell, you can do everything you need. Let's shift our focus to something all need but rarely love to manage manually, which is DHCP reservations. With PowerShell, you can automate the process, ensuring that static IP addresses for your critical devices without breaking a sweat. By the end of this clip, you'll know how to manage DHCP reservations with PowerShell, giving you one less task to worry about in your busy day. Ready to dive deeper? In this demo, we'll tackle reservations. You'll learn how to use PowerShell to create new reservations so specific clients only get the same IP address, but that's not all. We'll also modify existing reservations and, if needed, remove them. So let's get started implementing some DHCP reservations. So I'm going to start first by confirming that the scope that I want to work with actually exists. And yep, we have the 192.168.1.0 scope. That is the scope that we're going to be adding the reservations to. Now I'm going to add a DHCP reservation. Let's just say, I don't know, it's for a printer. All right, that worked. So the commandlet add DHCP server v4 reservation is the commandlet, obviously, that you use to add a reservation. You specify the scope ID, which is the ID that the reservation will be in, the IP address that you would like to reserve, and the client ID, the MAC address of the client that you want the IP address to be associated with, and an optional description. In this case, I just said printer. All right, now that the DHCP reservation is in there, let me see if it actually applied. Great, looks like it did. So I specified the scope ID of 1.0 and it gave me all the reservations associated with that scope. And it does have the 1.60 IP address in there with the correct client ID. So it's all in the DHCP database. All right, great. So the reservation is there. Now, let's just say you need to change this reservation. Well, unfortunately, you can't directly change a reservation. You have to remove it and create a new one. So what first I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this one temporarily and then just change it with another IP address. So to remove it, I can query just the exact reservation by specifying the scope ID and the exact IP address for this reservation. And it's going to tell me, oh, can't resolve the name parameters. That's because probably it doesn't need the scope ID. Let's see this, try this out. There we go. We just need to specify the IP address. So now we're only getting just that IP address for just this lease. Now using PowerShell, I can simply pipe this to remove DHCP server v4 reservation, hit enter, and it should be gone. We run this again, and yep, it is failed to get reservation. I don't know why it gives me an error message, but that is okay. We don't need a reservation. So now the reservation is gone. And then to update it, we simply run add DHCP server v4 reservation again with a different IP address. All right, there we go. Now I just simply change the IP address. I hit up arrow a few times, change the IP address to 1.65, and now we'll try this with 1.60. Doesn't exist, what you expect. And we try it with 1.65, and it does exist. So there we go. This wraps up the demo on creating and modifying, well, air quotes, modifying and removing DHCP reservations using PowerShell. This task really is far simpler and faster with PowerShell rather than clicking around, whether you're handling one reservation like we did here or dozens.